Councilor Arroyo.
Good afternoon, everybody. Really grateful to have you here in our community. My name is Ricardo Arroyo. I'm the son of a mother who was a Boston Public School teacher for 35 years, and a father who was the first Latino elected citywide in Boston and the first Latino elected countywide in the state of Massachusetts. And so with those kinds of parents who were focused very much on how we close and end racial systemic issues, I became a public defender. And so as a public defender here in Massachusetts, I became really tired of seeing systems continuously contribute to issues that I was dealing with on a day-to-day basis, whether that was over-criminalizing people with mental health issues, over-criminalizing people with addiction issues, and the lack of stability from having unstable housing and educational outcomes here in Boston specifically. And so I ran to represent District 5 where you are now. District 5 has Mattapan in it, which is it's actually the highest amount of home ownership for African American Black community members here in, I want to say state, right? And so, yeah, we got a lot to be proud of, but in my history, I actually in 2019 became the first elected person of color to represent this district. And so Mattapan, and just to give folks an idea, when I was being raised in Hyde Park, I think my family was like number 7 in terms of families of color here in this area. We went from 75% Italian and Irish to 75% Black and Latino. So large change over that time, 15, 20 years. And so in that frame, for a long time, that concentration of power within white parts of the district meant that parts like Mattapan were not receiving equitable distribution of city services, weren't receiving a number of different things. And so my first act as a counselor was to declare racism a public health crisis, to work on that. Yeah. The other thing that we got taken care of was the Office of Police Accountability and Transparency, which we have Stephanie Everett here, who's the first and the major focus for me is addressing these gaps that we see. My why is that all of our things are systemically connected. You can't have good schools if kids are going home hungry or don't have a home to go to. You can't have safe streets if we don't have health systems and health care in place for them. So one of the things we did was bring $2 million back for the first community health center in Hyde Park. But it's these focuses on that interconnectedness that is my why. It's why I do this, but it's also to speak truth to these racial systemic issues that we have. We get asked a lot. Welcome to Boston, by the way. We get asked a lot, is Boston a racist city? We get asked that a lot. My answer to I'll end on this. My answer to that, you see them trying to pull me off on the racist question. My answer to that is that I have not been in a city in America that is not a racist city.
Thank you.
And so I say that to say that there's a lot of work for us to do to undo that. That is the work I do with my partners here every day. I will leave you with that, and any questions folks may have, I'm happy to answer before they shut like her joint.
Hi everybody, I am Ruthie Louisiane. Welcome to Boston. So happy to have you all here in our city. I am serving in my first term as an at-large city councilor, 18 months, which means I represent the entire city, which is a big feat for a Black woman. The first one to do it was Ayanna Preston. I walked in her footsteps. My why is actually in the back of this room. I don't know how he gets my schedule, but he is everywhere I am, and that is my father. 4 Black, not speaking the language, and just knew that education was going to be our way up and out for me and my 3 sisters, him and my mom. So they invested in public school. People were like, why'd you send your kids to public school? He's like, that's all we had, right? Because the extra little money we had to send back to Haiti. So I know y'all heard, hopefully, from, because I was like, I'm sorry, juggling at large, juggling multiple things, but from Pastor Kiki and Dr. Gabal, who I work with intimately. Pastor Kiki is my second father. Dr. Gabal, we are on the phone at least 3 times a week, making sure that our Black migrants who are coming here of Haitian descent are treated with justice, equality, and with dignity, right? That is too often not happening. We have systems, our systems are racist, and that includes our immigration system. So it includes fighting against anti-Blackness in our systems, in our immigration system. So I'm proud to do that work. Proud to have fought for money for our Office of Returning Citizens so that we can try to correct the harm. When folks are coming home from incarceration, they need safe places, safe housing, they need safe jobs. And so that's the work that we're doing. I went there, was incredibly excited and just heartened by the work that that office has been able to do because of investments that we fought for on the city council. And so that's the work that I do every day. I started my career as an attorney representing folks in this neighborhood, in Mattapan, Hyde Park, throughout the city, my Haitian brothers and sisters using my really bad Spanish to represent folks in housing court who face eviction. Evictions disproportionately affect women of color with children. As a student at Harvard Law School working at the Legal Aid Bureau, that's how I got started, and this work is a continuation of that. Happy to be doing that in partnership with everyone here, with everyone in community. This work is not about one person, it's about all of us to really correct the wrongs and try to center those who have been historically excluded by our societies and our systems. Thank you, everyone. Cafe Juice Up. Did you all already get her shout?
Keep shouting it out.
Happy birthday, Denise. I don't know where she is, but today's also her birthday.
Let's go.
Okay, hello everybody.
Hello.
I already met some of y'all. I met y'all yesterday, so I'm really excited to be with you all, and I'm going to be on the tour with you along your journey. So I'm not going to take up too much space because you'll get to listen and learn about me on the bus. So basically, in a nutshell, why did I run? To cause disruption. The first person in my family to graduate high school and college. I got my mom on Section 8, right? And I was the first person in my family to buy a house. So everything that I do on the council is deeply rooted in my own personal lived experience that till this day, I'm still fighting for. That's it. That is why I run, to be disruptive, to be loud, and to be unapologetic about serving Black and brown people, period. I do so as an at-large city councilor, so even when I am in community, in spaces and places that are not about my people, I am uplifting my people. Because it's about making sure that everybody understands what this moment is all about, right? And so I like to consider myself the little chihuahua on the council. People laugh at that because I'm always barking. But I'm not just barking with the I'm also delivering, right? I've only been in office for 3.5 years. I won by 1 vote. In the last 3.5 years, I passed 13 pieces of legislation on the city council. Okay? Yes. Let me tell you this. I did that while learning my job, because the only reason why I ended up in this space was because Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, right, was the first Black woman to represent us in city council, was the only person while she was in elected office on the council to participate in all of our activities. And when she had the audacity to run for Congress and win, the Boston Herald called me and asked me what I thought about it. That's the newspaper. I just said, you know what? If she could be the first Black woman to represent us in Congress, then I could be the first Latina, the first Afro-Latina to represent us in city council, okay? I said that without knowing what I was getting into. I say all of this is because when you have heart and hustle, right? I'm a community activist first, but I'm bringing that spirit inside the council because now is the time to be as loud and as bold as this moment is calling.
All right. Let's go.
And that's it. I'll be seeing y'all in the
Let's go.
Follow my city council colleagues. But welcome to our home, y'all. I get a little emotional. Please understand that this is so beautiful. You know, for those of us that grew up in the city, to see a new Boston where there is a Puerto Rican, a Dominican, a Haitian American, African American, and a Cape Verdean, West African.
Yes.
Come on. Yes. We out here. We outside.
And buildings that, whether it's City Hall, the Golden Dome that I served in for the last 4.5 years, where we were excluded. Hey girl, my married sister. So my why is really simple. I take a little bit from all of their stories, but 5 years ago, my brother was murdered, and I had my dream job, and it didn't feel right. You know, I couldn't go to work, I couldn't get out of bed, and I kept thinking, these decades of being a youth worker and a community organizer, saving other people's children, feeding other people's children, housing, educating, just wasn't enough. And I didn't even know my own strength, you know? And people said, why don't you run for office? You're the perfect example of someone who grew up in a neighborhood. My mother was a teen immigrant, single mother, had me at 17, dropped out of high school. My mom became a cook in Boston hotels. If any of you guys are staying at the Sheraton, my mom is making your meals.
Wow.
She still does that today. Wakes up at 3 a.m. To go into work to make other people's stays in that hotel good. And I ran, I beat 4 men, I set a record. I felt the fear and did it anyway, right? And I really stood on the shoulders of our ancestors. I'm the 4th Black woman to ever serve in the Massachusetts Senate. I stand on the shoulders of Linda Dorsina Forey, Diane Wilkerson, and my sister in service, Lydia Edwards. And there are only 4 black women serving in that building today, where there are 200 legislators. And oftentimes you guys think Massachusetts is a pretty liberal state, but the issues that I work on, many of them similar to my sisters and brothers in service, are environmental justice. I grew up in a neighborhood that there's 2 movies and a book about. You should pick it up. It's called Streets of Hope and Holding Ground and Gaining Ground. It is the story about how we literally built ourselves up from the ashes. We had 1,400 parcels of vacant land when there was white flight after school desegregation, and people literally burned their homes for profit, arson for profit. We were redlined, and the Cape Verdeans, who had just won a civil war against Portugal, were coming into this community, while there were Puerto Ricans coming from the South End, and African Americans who had moved from the South to the South End were being pushed out. And we made it work. We rebuilt our community. We're the first community in the country to get eminent domain power over our own land. And we stopped the highway. We rebuilt our community. So I like to say, people, that my why is really rooted in this story of the worst of times and the best of times. I was taught at 13 that we had a lot of power and a lot of juice. I haven't always remembered that. Because there's hard days, right? I walk into that building every day and I work with this great man, and I say to myself, I'm worthy enough and belong. But you'll see our city and see it in its transformative space. It's not all perfect. 2 days ago, I had to call the mayor to say, clean up our streets. And she did it because it's still a work in progress. Even though we're in these spaces, there are communities that are clean, that are safe, and that are healthier than ours. And we gotta keep fighting. So welcome, and I hope Boston becomes your second home.
I too want to begin by saying welcome and thank you all for coming. I'm Russell Holmes. I have the honor of representing parts of Mattapan, but I represent parts of Mattapan, Dorchester, Hyde Park, Rosendale, and JP. And I'm going to pick up where the senator left off. We in the state legislature try our best, and my why is to have a voice where we had never had a voice. It's always a reminder to me that when you walk around the State House, if you get there, you will see there are, and I say this often, there are white men on every wall. And we have to understand that those were not always the smartest and most capable people there were. And so when we know what the truth is we've been held out and held back for 400 years, right? And so my why. I grew up in a small town called Mountain Bayou, Mississippi. And so for those who don't know, rooted in just a town that started because of the fact that these folks wanted to get away from Lynch. I think you guys may have seen the Till movie. Obviously, that's when Miss Till went about an hour away from Money is Mountain Bayou, where she went and Meggers went for protection. I say that growing up in a town where everyone I knew was on food stamps. Everyone I knew going to Head Start was just the standard thing. I thought Head Start was just where everyone went. Everyone went and almost everyone had food that was given to us for free. And so my why begins with literally, you think about every single rung of the ladder that gets you from poverty to being able to be self-sufficient. I was on it. My family, from public schools to Upward Bound, you name a rung of the ladder, my family stepped on it. And if we didn't step on it, it was because we just didn't know it existed. And so I was on a phone call today with Ayanna. We were talking about some things, and I said to AP, we're talking about just some of the struggles in the work. And I just said to her, it is always a reminder to me of how blessed I am. I am blessed because of the fact that literally I said to her this morning, I'm deciding on Saturday, am I going to tell someone, no, I can't play at the country club, the most exclusive golf course there is, right? Because I have to go see the black woman president. That's just a different vice president. That's just a very different place from where we started. But you think about when you start from abject poverty to where the opportunities were. So my why is simply, you have to give back. If I'm not a person who understands that I would have to give back and be humbled by where I began, it would just be a sad day. And so I can tell you when Mimi was putting together this idea with Julia and the rest of the team and Liz, I said we should start in Mattapan. I said we should start here because of the fact that one, I think as you guys come from around the country, You guys are in a totally different fight than what we're in Massachusetts. I'm just gonna tell you that for straight out. We are in Massachusetts. I know there's been some implications about whether or not we are thought to be liberal. We are much liberal than what you're seeing in Tennessee, in Texas. I think I heard some folks say in Florida. And we want to make sure we send a signal that, hey, we know our path, our past. We're not gonna run away from the past of the South, of that what we've had here in Boston. But when you compare us today, when you think about what the NAACP should be thinking about today, we want you to, and this is what I said to the governors, and what I said to the mayors, we're trying to figure out this $2 million for what's gonna help to
Got
support
to see
this.
that. Thank you, partner.
We were saying, the folks who come here from around this country needs to understand there is a new Boston. And you need to understand that you should contrast, you know our history, but you should contrast in this moment where we're losing the opportunities around just voting, where we're losing the opportunity around just, even the Supreme Court votes 6-3, and they still say we're not going to reshape the map in Alabama, right? So you think about where we are, and we want you to just know, we want you to consider Boston. Consider Boston, whether or not it's your kids coming to go to school, we want them to stay here. I know lots of folks have moved to DC and Atlanta and all the other places, but we believe that this is still a very attractive place for you to consider. And so today, Cafe Juice Up. I know we said it 3 or 4 times. Please don't leave here without trying black-owned business.
That's right.
Go to the next place. Please don't leave here without trying. It's free for you, but we're going to support you. Every place you go today, we want you to just see, it's not just the seaport. There are places where black and brown folks live. We are here, and you've heard from some very powerful people today about what it is we're doing for work. And you're going to hear that at the next 2 stops as well. So please be engaged. We're so thankful to have you here. Get your cafe juice up, and we're going to do our best to not be on CPT.
That's right.
Thank you all for coming.
Woo! That was nice. That was wonderful. See all the beautiful people in the building.
1 hour. 1 hour.
Was that you just drove up?
It was me.
It was you.
You took her spot. I was like, who's taking my daughter's spot?
I was telling her, I was gonna give it to you and I was gonna go there. I was ready to do that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was going there. What a beautiful crowd. Yes, blessed to you.